Okay guys, so for this project, you're gonna need a ruler, scissors, clips, your sewing machine, and something to write with, for sure. You'll probably need that for most of our sewing tutorials, unless it's a no-sew, and then you may not need your sewing machine. But I'm gonna set all of the major stuff aside for a second. I'm also gonna be using boning. This is kind of optional, so if you're not concerned with your tunnel openings staying open, or you have an animal that likes to burrow, they're probably going to be able to get into the openings without using this. I like to keep my openings as round as I can, so I am a boning junkie and I love it. So I'm going to be using that. Also, I don't have a problem with my ferrets eating it or chewing it or even being able to access it, so I don't really worry about this. So I do use this. I'm also going to be using Pellon Fusible Fleece. This is going to be for stabilization to help my tunnel hold its shape. You could use uhaul. I've seen people use uhaul padding. You could use batting. So you have a couple options for stabilization. I really like this. The glue on it is non-toxic according to the manufacturer. I've never had any issues with it. It works amazingly. It's expensive, but I really love it. I buy it by the bolt because I use it for a lot of my Etsy items. So I have a lot here, but you can get this a lot of times at Joann's. And please, if it's not on sale, go on their app or online and get a coupon. Don't pay full price for this ever. That's all I'm gonna say. You're also gonna need about 1.5 yards of cotton if you make your tunnel the same size as mine. If you make it bigger or smaller, obviously the size or the amount of fabric you need will change. Same thing with the fleece, although fleece is wider than cotton, so you may end up needing a little bit less than 1.5 yards. Fleece is about 60 inches wide when you open it, and cotton is only 48 inches, so obviously there's a little bit of difference there. But just to be on the safe side, I'd get about 1.5 yards each. It's not going to hurt to have a little bit extra. So that's what we're going to need. The other thing that I did was cut a template, because I'm going to be cutting a lot of these shapes and it's going to be a little bit easier to do it with a template. I'm ensuring all the sizes are the same and it just makes it easier. So definitely create a template. I will put the sizes for this in the description, but I'm also going to take a picture of this and freeze it on the screen for a second so you guys can see it. It's going to be hard to see it while we're going through the video, so I will put it up so that you guys can take a picture of it and have it if you want to copy it to use it for your own tunnel. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my template and I'm going to cut 8 pieces of flannel and 8 pieces of fleece. If you're using a directional fabric, make sure you pay attention to how you cut this so that you know how you're going to place it. For me, I want it to look like this. I'm going to have my the top of my fabric be the points, but make sure that when you cut all your pieces, they're all going the same way so that when you put it together, it looks not all crazy and wonky. I'm also going to cut a piece of pellon for each piece of fabric. It's up to you how much pellon you use. The more you use, obviously, if you put a piece on each piece of these, so that's 16 pieces of pellon, then you would have a really sturdy tunnel. I think it will be pretty sturdy if you just use 8. You could also use batting, or you could use U-haul. You have a couple options. If you use batting and U-haul, it makes it really thick to sew. So just take that into consideration. With your pellon, what you want to do is it irons on, but you want to make sure that you make it a little bit smaller than the actual shape. So these are cut about 1/2 inch smaller all the way around. And I'm going to iron these on. I'm not going to film this part because it's a long process and I don't think you guys would be asleep if you watched me iron all this on. So I'm going to stop the video, iron all this on, and then I'll pick it back up. When you buy the pellon, there's instructions for ironing it, but what I will say is don't really follow those instructions all the way because you'll burn. If you're doing it on cotton, you can completely follow the instructions. If you iron pellon onto fleece, please be super careful. Do it very slowly, only do it for a couple of seconds at a time, and make sure you have a towel or something over top when you're ironing, especially with fleece, because you will burn your fleece. Fleece is not really meant to be ironed, so adding pellon to fleece, you just have to be uber careful and do it really slow and for like a little bit of time, maybe 5 seconds at a time, and check it just to make sure that you're not burning your fleece. It's doable. I do it all the time. You just can't hold it on there for the 20 seconds that it recommends you hold it on there for something like this. Okay, so now you should have your pellon ironed, or whatever you're using if you're choosing to use something to stabilize it. So we're going to start with our outside pieces, or our cotton pieces, our flannel pieces, whatever your outside pattern is. Take one of them, take another one, and place them right sides together and line them up, just like this. And then you're going to take a clip or a pin. You don't really have to clip or pin it, but just for the sake of the video, and just clip one of these diagonal edges, just one. You're going to do the same thing with another one of those pieces. Line them right sides together. So I have 4 pieces. 2 of them are right sides together. 2 of these are right sides together. I'm going to stitch from here to here on this one, and from here to here on this one. Alright, so I'm just putting this under my presser foot. I'm just going to do a 1/4 inch seam. Okay, so now that you've sewn those, you should have something that looks like this. So you have it like this. You need to line this edge up with this edge and this edge with this edge. So you see they kind of match up now. So we'll do this one first. I'm just going to line that up. You want your seams, try to line your seams up. And you're still not sewing down the sides. You're only going to stitch the diagonal on both of these. So stitch from here to the point and from here to the point. Leave your sides open. Do not stitch your sides or your bottom. Okay, so now that you've stitched this, you should be able to open it up and have something that looks like this. So put this aside for a second. You're going to do the exact same thing with these pieces. So we're just, okay, so now you should have both of your outer pieces. This is going to be the outer top and bottom of your project. They should both kind of look like an X. So open them both up. Make sure you got 2 pieces that look like this. Now you need to lay these on top of each other and line them up, match them up. You're going to clip the sides together. You are not going to sew the ends, so we're just clipping the sides. We're lining up all of our seams, line up your edges, your sides. Okay, you should now have something that looks like this. You should have your top and your bottom pieces facing right sides together. You're going to go over to your sewing machine. You're not going to stitch the bottoms or the openings. These are your openings, so you do not want to stitch those. You just want to stitch this V between each of the tunnel legs. Okay, so now that you've done that, this should be all stitched except for at the legs. What you want to do is you want to turn this right side out. Alright, you should have something that looks like this. Alright, so you can just sit this aside. Go get your fleece. So what we're going to do now is the exact same thing that we just did for that outer fabric. We're going to do the exact same thing for this inner fabric. Do not flip your inside fabric. Don't flip it right side out. Leave it wrong sides facing out. But what I am going to do is I'm going to trim any excess fabric off the sides, but just be careful. Don't do it too much. You don't want to accidentally cut it. Okay, so now you have your outer fabric with the right side facing out, and you have your inner fabric with the wrong side facing out. Here's going to be the fun part. You got to take this and you got to put it in here. Now, it's going to take some working. So just take your time, take one of your spider legs and put it in there. You're going to have to play with this until you get it all lined up. So what we're going to do now is we're going to make our openings like this. So now that you have fit your inner fabric inside and it looks like this, you need to, you can do the ends a couple ways. So let me just say this. If you don't want to use boning, that's completely fine. If you want to add boning, I take it out of the casing when I did this because it's a really small space and I don't want to add the casing. So I just kind of guesstimate it because you can always chop off the extra, how much I'm going to need. You can roll it back like I just did mine. It looks like this. Make sure it's even. And then you need to tuck the raw edges under. And you can even pin this in place like this. And then if you're going to add boning, you want to make sure that you leave enough room that your boning can fit. So I have 1/4 inch boning. And so what I did with this one is I did exactly what I just did here. And then I rolled back these edges so that the raw edges were hidden. And I pinned them in place like this. I'm going to fix this up before I sew it because I can tell just from here it needs to be adjusted a little bit. And then I rolled it, I flipped it over. And I tucked this side like this, the other side around. You can also just do this and stitch around it and not add boning. That's completely up to you. Most animals can get in these tunnels if they don't have big wide openings. They're burrowing animals. They like it. It's fun to them. So they don't necessarily need the big old openings to be open. That's, I think for me, that's kind of my thing. I like it. I don't think the ferrets could care less. They get in it whether it's open or not. Okay, so now we have it pinned in place, and I went over to my sewing machine and I took off my tray and I stitched all the way around, but to add the boning, I left about an opening about this big. And then once I stitched all the way around, left that opening, and then I slid the boning in that opening. So I'm going to stitch all the way around this and show you guys how I stuck the boning in. So now that you have stitched around, you'll have an opening, and you should be able to take your boning and put it in that opening. And you might have to play with this a little bit if it gets caught or if it gets stuck. That's not abnormal. Sometimes it happens. But once you get it going, you can feel it. So just like you might have to mess with it, but as long as the space is wide enough and you didn't stitch where there's no opening or no way for this boning to go through, you should be okay. You might have to help it through and feed it through, but it'll get there. Yay! All right, so we are all the way in, and sometimes I double it just so I have a little bit left over. I bring it in that other side. There we go. Now that's in there. Then you want to just push it so that it's at the top of the roll. And then you're going to go back to your sewing machine and finish stitching right here so that it's completely closed off. You can also add an extra top stitch right up against the boning if you wanted to. Okay, so once you have your tunnels, openings closed, even if you just stitched it and didn't add boning, once all that's done, you need to do one more thing. Or I guess I would recommend you do one more thing. You want to stick your hand in here, and I can't show you the inside because of how it is, but you want to, there's obviously a space. I don't want my inside fleece to fall, and it's not connected to my outer fleece except for on the ends. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a needle and thread. I'm going to tie a knot in the end. And I am going to reach my hand in. Find the center. If you'll see there's a center and a point here. Let me zoom in. Alright, so, and what I'm just going to do is I'm going to feel with my finger and find the seam of the inside piece. And I'm just going to just do a tiny little stitch to the top, right through that center where the seam is, just to hold the inner piece, the top of the inner piece to the top of the outer piece, and then I'm going to do the same thing at the bottom. I'm not going to go crazy. I'm just putting a little stitch in the seams if I can wiggle my needle through there. And I'm feeling with my hand so that I can make sure I know where I'm going here. And don't poke yourself. That would probably be pretty easy to do in this situation. And just make sure you don't also sew the top and the bottom together, although I doubt you would do that because your hand's in here, so I don't really see. I'll probably do that a couple times just a tiny little stitch, and then tie it off. And that way there's a space, a clear space in the center for the babies, and they're not, the top isn't falling in on them, or the bottom, if it's flipped over, the bottom isn't falling in on them. And then once you do that, that's it, you're done.